They thought watching you would heal their ego. Instead, it crushed it. That's what happens when someone uses a chosen one as a measuring stick for self-worth. It backfires miserably. They thought your life would be proof that they were doing better, that you were behind, stuck, irrelevant. But when they came back to spy, when they peeked at your growth to get a little hit of self-importance, what they saw ripped the mask off their illusions. They weren't better, they weren't ahead, and worst of all, they were never even in your league. Imagine walking into a burning building thinking the fire's out, just to realize the flames were waiting for you. That's what happened when they visited your page, your life, your glow, expecting to find ashes, and instead finding proof that the universe is still blessing you. They expected to feel relief. Instead, they walked away with a gut full of regret and a head full of questions they never wanted to ask. Here's a fact they're choking on right now. People who spend their life mocking others for being behind are almost always the ones secretly terrified of staying stagnant. They hate growth they didn't expect. They fear success they didn't predict. They crumble in silence when the one they underestimated, you, becomes undeniable. And thank you, chosen one. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing like and subscribe to help spread this message to more souls. It's the responsibility of all of us to spread the light. And thank you, chosen one, for being a part of this mission. You are not just watching, you are part of a force. Now let's get back to the truth that's eating them alive. The person who used to laugh at your setbacks, the one who once got high off your lows, that person is now sitting in silence, scrolling through your success, hoping it's not real. They don't know whether to cry, clap, or disappear, because they once saw you as their bottom line. You were their lowest comparison point, the one they could point to and say, at least I'm doing better than them. But now they're realizing you were never the bottom. You were the storm building quietly while they slept on you. They tried to use your life as an ego boost, and what they got was a divine slap in the face. Because you, chosen one, were never meant to be their footstool. You were their wake-up call, a living reminder that life doesn't stay in one season, that pain can transform, that silence can build empires. Let's be real, they thought you were done for. Maybe you were quiet, maybe life hit you hard and you went off the grid. Maybe you were rebuilding, healing, recovering. They took your quiet season as proof you were stuck. They whispered your name in rooms with smirks on their faces. They mocked your journey without understanding your silence was sacred. That's the thing about people who haven't been through real transformation. They think progress has to be loud. They don't understand that true growth happens in hidden places. So when they finally came back, ready to feast on your failure, they found you glowing, they found you rising, they saw your skin clearer, your energy unbothered, your vision focused, and worst of all for them, they saw you didn't even notice them. That's what breaks a narcissist. That's what humbles someone who depends on others to feel superior. You didn't even know they were competing because they never mattered that much. This was never a battle. You were never trying to win anything against them. You were too focused on your own lane, but their ego needed you to be beneath them. They built false confidence off your setbacks. And now with nothing left to cling to, their pride is collapsing. You were the mirror they used to look taller. Now the mirror reflects reality, and it's unforgiving. They've been exposed, not just to you, but to themselves. Because here's another brutal truth. When someone uses you to feel better about their life, it's only because they're too scared to look at their own reflection. You were their distraction. But distractions don't last forever. Eventually, reality slaps. And in their case, that slap came when they saw the version of you they never believed could exist. You weren't just doing okay, you were thriving. Maybe you didn't post every victory, maybe your wins were quiet, but they hit harder because they were real. You've evolved, healed, elevated, and the version of you they thought would never make it is now the version they can't compete with. And that's the part they'll never admit out loud, that they admired you all along, that they checked in on you hoping to find wreckage, but instead found resilience, that they're sitting in a room full of noise, but your silence is what's echoing in their mind. They don't hate you because you failed. They hate you because you refused to stay down, because every time they thought you were out for the count, you got back up with more wisdom, more strength, and more proof that you're not to be underestimated. Your progress is their punishment. Your glow-up is their ego death. And the worst part, you didn't even try. You weren't even aware they were watching. You just stayed in your lane, healed in your quiet, and moved with the energy of someone who knows the universe is on their side. And now they have to live with the fact that someone they once mocked has become their biggest emotional trigger. That the person they once used to patch their insecurities is now a walking reminder of their own unhealed mess. This is why they're quiet now, why they avoid your page, why they pretend they don't see you. Because every time they look, they don't just see you, they see the lie they built about you crumbling. They tried to use you to feel better about themselves. Instead, they triggered their own collapse. And you, chosen one, you just kept shining. And listen closely, chosen one. If someone tried to use your downfall as fuel for their pride and ended up wrecking their own reflection in the process, then this message is carved straight from your story. What you're about to hear next isn't just truth, it's confirmation. So before we continue, drop an 888 in the comments if you know someone tried to mock your journey but ended up choking on your progress. And if you feel called, bless the creators of this message with a super thanks. Not because we ask, but because truth like this takes spiritual stamina to deliver. Whether it's 1 cent or 100, you're fueling a mission built on exposing the silent wars and uplifting those the world tried to bury. And now, let's break this down piece by piece. Believe me, if you're really a chosen one, you won't just want to stay. You won't be able to look away. What comes next will echo everything you felt but couldn't prove. Let's begin. Number 1. They picked the wrong battle. You weren't even playing. When you compete with someone who's not even aware of the game, you don't win. You expose your own insecurity. That's exactly what happened here. They tried to flex on a chosen one. They tried to win against someone who wasn't even in the ring and ended up knocking themselves out. Pathetic, isn't it? The moment they started measuring their worth by how far ahead they thought they were from you, they had already lost. Because anyone who needs to compare themselves to someone else to feel valuable is already operating from lack, from a deep inner poverty they can't fix with money, followers, or fake confidence. They made you their silent opponent. You didn't provoke it. You didn't challenge them. You were busy healing, building, staying low. But in their insecure little mind, you were the competition. You were the one they needed to beat. So they started watching from the shadows, smirking at your struggle, smiling at your pain, whispering to others, they'll never make it out. But the universe keeps the receipts. And when you started rising, slowly, silently, powerfully, they couldn't handle it, because the one they thought they left behind passed them without even noticing they were there. Let's be real, they wanted to see you beg, they wanted to see you crumble, but you didn't fold, you evolved. And when they saw you again, you weren't who they remembered. You weren't broken, you weren't desperate. You weren't beneath them anymore. You were out of reach. That's the sting that burns the deepest. Not only did they lose a battle they created in their own imagination, they lost it to someone who wasn't even looking their way. Now maybe you're wondering, why would someone go so far to one-up me when I never even did anything to them? Here's why. Because you are triggering, not in a loud, aggressive way, but in the quiet way that exposes people's illusions. You move with purpose. You carry resilience. You walk in energy that doesn't beg for attention, and that drives ego-fueled people insane. Because deep down, they know they've built a persona on image, not integrity. On noise, not substance. And your calm presence, your steady healing, your quiet comeback, it reminds them that real strength doesn't scream. It builds in silence and shows up when it's time. You didn't play their game. You didn't run to defend your name. You didn't even retaliate. That's what made them implode. You see, narcissistic types hate silence. They hate indifference, because when you don't acknowledge their petty war, it exposes the fact that their entire sense of superiority is built on nothing. It's like shadowboxing in the dark. They threw every punch they could, but all it did was exhaust themselves. This is your confirmation. You never had to fight dirty to win. The universe already rigged the game in your favor by giving you authentic power, not performance, not pretension. And no matter how many times they tried to discredit you, the results speak louder than their gossip. They thought they were taking jabs at someone weak, but every hit only built your endurance. And now you're untouchable. They picked a war with someone who was only at war with their past, and that's why they lost, miserably. Number 2, you used to be their ego bandage. They didn't want to heal, they just wanted to feel better by watching you suffer. That's the level of sickness we're dealing with. You weren't just a name to them, chosen one. You were their emotional crutch, their ego bandage. Every time life humbled them, every time they felt like a failure in their own lane, they ran to yours, just to make sure you were doing worse, just to remind themselves, at least I'm not them. That's how fragile their confidence was. You were the one they kept in their back pocket as a psychological safety net, not because you ever wronged them, but because your struggle made them feel like less of a loser. They didn't cheer when you won, they smiled when you fell. That's how deep their self-hate runs, because anyone who needs to see someone else broken to feel whole is already shattered on the inside. Some people don't hate your growth. They hate the fact that it proves they wasted time mocking someone who kept climbing. They kept checking in on you, not out of curiosity, but desperation. Imagine that. Someone refreshing your page, revisiting your life like it's their personal dose of painkiller. Like your setbacks were therapy for their inflated sense of superiority. Like your struggle was a salve for their fragile self-image. But here's what happened. This time, when they checked, it didn't work. This time, instead of finding you lost, they found you glowing. Instead of ashes, they saw fire. Instead of pity, they saw power. And their entire illusion cracked right down the middle. They came to sip on your downfall and choked on your upgrade instead. Imagine walking into a mirror store expecting to laugh at all the broken reflections, but one mirror doesn't just reflect back, it blinds you with light. That was you. You weren't the same broken image they remembered. You were transformed. You were evidence that healing happened, that growth was real, and that terrified them, because now they couldn't use you anymore. And maybe you're asking yourself, why me? Why did I become their point of comparison? What made them so obsessed with keeping me beneath them? The answer is brutal. Because you were once accessible. Because there was a time when you were down, when you were quiet, when you were in survival mode. And they saw it. They bookmarked it in their minds as your permanent state. They assumed your struggle was your final form. And they built their self-worth on the lie that you would always stay behind. Some people don't want you to fail forever. They just want you to stay beneath them long enough to feel tall. But that's the thing about chosen ones. We don't stay broken. We don't stay quiet. We evolve. We outgrow the versions of ourselves that others try to trap us in. You weren't the same person they left behind. You've outlived your former self, and now their comfort zone is gone. That false security they used to get from checking on your life, it's dead, and the truth is haunting them. Let me give you another picture. Imagine someone building a house on a shaky hill. They know the foundation is weak, but they ignore it because they think the view makes up for it. Now imagine the moment they look out and see your tower rising, solid, secure, unshakable. Suddenly their hilltop doesn't feel so safe. That's exactly what your glow-up did. It made their ego home collapse. The truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to stand tall while the lies collapse around it. And that's what your life did. You didn't post for revenge. You didn't level up to prove a point. You just kept walking, healing, growing. You kept it moving. But because they've been stuck, circling the same cycle, entertaining the same delusions, your movement felt like an attack. Your peace felt like a threat. Your silence became louder than their noise. They came to see you stuck and saw you soaring. They came looking for a struggle and found success. They came to see you cry and caught you thriving. And now they're rattled because it forces them to confront a truth they've avoided for years. They've done nothing with their life while watching you rebuild yours from rock bottom. That's not just painful, it's humiliating. You weren't the underdog, you were the undercover. And now that you've surfaced, now that your light is visible, they can no longer pretend. They can't unsee your glow. They can't reframe the narrative. They can't run to your profile to get their little ego fix anymore, because now, looking at you only reminds them of how far they've fallen behind. Let me ask you something. How often have you felt watched, not by people who supported you, but by people who seemed invested in your struggle? How often have you noticed those silent views, those sneaky likes, those energy shifts that told you someone's watching and it ain't love? That's real. Chosen ones are often unknowingly cast into roles in other people's secret dramas. You never asked to be their villain, their competition, or their proof that they were winning. But they chose you anyway, because your energy, even in your low seasons, meant something to them. And that's where the humiliation cuts deepest for them. Not only can they no longer mock you, they have to admit you were never beneath them. That's what burns. That's what eats at them at night. Because deep down, they knew you had it. They just didn't want to believe they'd be the one left behind. So now what? Now they're stuck in a room with their own ego. No more bandages, no more distractions, just the cold realization that their sense of superiority was always fake, and that you, the one they looked down on, were the truth they couldn't handle. Let them sit with it. Let them watch you rise. Let them realize what they lost while trying to use you as a step stool, because your glow is no longer optional to see. It's a blinding reminder that healing, power, and elevation don't come from ego. They come from resilience. And chosen one, you are the proof they can no longer deny. Number 3, their life fell apart. Yours took off. They thought time would bury you, but time turned you into a storm. That's the hard truth their ego wasn't ready for. They thought you'd stay stuck, quietly struggling, quietly failing, quietly forgotten. In their fantasy, your life would be a slow-motion wreck. No movement, no light, no redemption. They imagined themselves soaring while you stayed on pause. But when they finally peeked in, the shock hit like a wrecking ball. You weren't broken. You were blooming. They expected to see dust. Instead, they saw diamonds. Imagine thinking someone was buried, only to realize they were planted. That's the kind of mistake they made, and now the roots you laid in silence have grown into something they can't ignore. Not in the timeline, not in the comments, and definitely not in their own racing thoughts at night. The enemy always counts you out before they see the comeback. That's how they end up choking on their own certainty. Your growth wasn't just unexpected. It was offensive to them because it proved that what they believed about you was never true. You didn't fall apart. You evolved. You didn't disappear. You rebuilt. And your new season made their old assumptions look childish. Maybe you're wondering, why would they be so invested in my downfall anyway? It's because your rise reminds them of everything they failed to do with their own potential. You were the one they used to feel safe, the reminder that at least someone else is doing worse. But now you're the standard, and they don't even know how to be happy for you because they've built their identity on seeing you stay down. Let them sit with it. You took off. They fell apart, not because you tried to one-up them, but because you stopped playing small, and that is what truly humbled them. Number 4. They didn't expect you to rise this quietly. Loud mouths never expect quiet moves to echo louder than their noise. They were waiting on a spectacle. They expected to witness your collapse in public, the breakdown, the failure, the tears. But instead, what they got was a plot twist so silent it shattered their entire perception of you. You didn't make noise. You didn't announce your pain, your healing, or your glow-up. You just did the work behind the curtain, and now the results are undeniable. They didn't see the late nights. They didn't see the self-doubt, the rebuilding, the lonely victories. And because you weren't shouting about your process, they assumed you had nothing to show. Big mistake. Because now, without a word, your presence alone is louder than all the gossip they used to spread. Real power doesn't beg to be noticed. It forces silence when it enters the room. Imagine planting seeds in total darkness. Everyone around you laughs, says it's pointless, but months later, roots have formed, and your growth bursts through the soil like a silent explosion. That's you, a quiet eruption, a walking contradiction to every assumption they made. They thought you'd crumble. You turned into a mountain, and now they're scrambling for answers. How did you bounce back? When did this happen? They're losing sleep over your silence because it exposes their noise for what it truly is. Empty. You didn't clap back, you didn't flex, but the glow-up, it's personal, it's real, and it's making them feel like they missed something big. Why does it burn them so badly? Because they hate not being able to take credit, discredit, or deny what you've become. Your quiet rise leaves them powerless. No reaction to manipulate, no drama to weaponize. Just you, leveling up without permission, without explanation. Let them wonder. Let your silence haunt them. You didn't rise loud, you rose real, and that's the kind of elevation that echoes forever. Number 5. You were never the one losing, they just couldn't see it. They called you lost because they couldn't read your map. That's what happens when small minds try to define a chosen one's timeline. They thought you were losing. They thought your silence meant surrender. Your healing meant weakness. Your mistakes meant you were finished. But the truth? You were never losing. You were learning. You were never behind. You were building. What looked like a breakdown to them was actually your reboot. You were recalculating, reprogramming, and rising in ways they couldn't comprehend. They used your past as a weapon. Every misstep, every failure, every heartbreak, they held it up like proof that you'd never make it. But what they didn't realize is that chosen ones don't lose from pain. We evolve through it. Every scar you've got is a receipt for wisdom. Every loss taught you how to move sharper, quieter, stronger. Your downfall was just a data download, the update they weren't ready for. Imagine a rocket preparing for liftoff. For a long time, it looked still, smoke gathering, engines silent. To an untrained eye, it looks delayed. But in reality, that silence is calibration. That's what your life was. You weren't stuck. You were aligning. And now that you've taken off, they can't catch up because you were never even racing them in the first place. Maybe you've asked yourself, why did they judge me so harshly? Because they needed to. Your growth threatened their excuses. Your bounce back ruined their predictions. It was easier for them to believe you were done than to face their own stagnation. But the universe always flips the script. And now their judgment is the punchline. Yours is the victory. You were never losing, you were leveling. And now the scoreboard is clear. You evolved while they were busy watching. You were in motion while they were mocking. And when you finally crossed the line, they realized you'd been ahead the entire time. Number 6, they've been exposed, not just to you, but to themselves. Some people don't regret what they did. They regret getting caught doing it. That's exactly what's happening right now. They're not crying because they've suddenly grown a conscience. They're crying because the illusion cracked, and now everyone, including themselves, can see what's underneath. The lies they told about you, the rumors they spread, the fake confidence they projected, all of it has turned on them. The spotlight they once used to expose you has swung back in their direction, and this time there's nowhere left to hide. They used to call you the fraud. They said you were fake, dramatic, overconfident, maybe even delusional, but the truth always circles back. When you build your identity on lies, life eventually sends you the invoice, and now they're paying up. In embarrassment, isolation, and self-loathing. The same energy they once threw at you is haunting them, line for line, moment for moment. Imagine painting a target on someone's back, only to wake up one day and realize the paint washed off and stained your own shirt. That's what exposure feels like. Their own deception became their downfall. You didn't need revenge. The truth did all the heavy lifting. And here's the cruel part. They can't even spin it anymore. The mask that used to protect them doesn't fit. The people who once believed them are starting to question everything. You know what burns the most? They finally have to face the reality they avoided for years. You were never the problem. You were the mirror, the light, the quiet truth that kept shining through their shade. Maybe you wonder, do they feel sorry now? Not really. What they feel is panic. Because when the performance ends and the audience walks away, all that's left is silence and the reflection they can't stand to see. That's their punishment now. To live in a truth they spent years trying to bury. The universe doesn't humiliate you to destroy you. It humbles you to reveal you. And that's exactly what's happening. They've been exposed, not just in public, but in private. The worst kind of exposure is the one that happens in your own mind, when you finally realize you're the villain in a story you wrote to make someone else look bad. Number 7. Their ego took a public beating. They thought your life was the punchline. Now they're choking on the irony. That's what happens when someone builds their confidence on your supposed failure. They expected to find a mess. They expected you to be struggling, falling apart, barely getting by. They were ready to laugh, ready to gossip, ready to feed their ego with your so-called downfall. But instead of a punchline, they found a plot twist. You made it out. And now? Their egos taking blow after blow in the quiet corners where they can't fake their reactions anymore. They thought you'd be the story everyone forgot, but now you're the headline their silence can't ignore. Some people don't want you to fail, they just want to be able to say they did better than you. And when they saw that wasn't true, when they checked on your life and saw light instead of loss, they crumbled on the inside. You didn't just survive, you thrived. You didn't just heal, you evolved. And it destroyed their inner narrative. Their fake superiority couldn't withstand the weight of your reality. Imagine setting up a stage, calling the crowd to mock someone, only to have that person walk in as the main event. That's what your life has become to them, a daily reminder that they bet against someone the universe was backing all along. Now they're quiet. That overly confident energy is gone. They can't brag the same way, can't smirk, can't speak your name without their voice shaking just a little, because they've been spiritually humbled, and it's public. No apology, no noise. Just that slow, sinking realization that the one they laughed at is now someone they can't stand next to without feeling small. Their ego took a hit, not because you hit back, but because your growth made them irrelevant. That's the real slap. You didn't need revenge, you just needed time. And now, you're the proof that the best comeback isn't loud. It's undeniable. Number 8. You trigger transformation without trying. You didn't expose them with words. Your energy told the truth they were hiding from. That's the kind of power you carry, chosen one. You never asked to be a leader, a teacher, a wake-up call, but your presence teaches without speaking. You walk into a room and suddenly people feel uncomfortable, not because you've judged them, but because your very existence reflects everything they're pretending not to be. You didn't try to correct them, you didn't say a word, but your peace, your clarity, your purpose, it rattled them. That's what you are, a walking disruption to the delusional, a quiet force that forces truth to surface. You are the trigger they didn't know they needed, and the lesson they didn't want to learn. They looked at you thinking you were just another soft target, someone they could compare themselves to, someone they'd outgrow. But when they watched how you moved, how you carried pain without bitterness, how you kept showing up even when everything was stacked against you, it shattered their illusions. Imagine a dusty old room that hasn't seen sunlight in years. Everything looks fine until you pull the curtains back. Suddenly, the dust is everywhere, visible, unavoidable. That's what you do to people. You reveal the dirt they were trying to live with, and some can't handle that. So instead of cleaning it up, they attack you, the light. Maybe you've asked, why do I keep triggering people who barely know me? Because your vibration doesn't match their comfort zones. You represent evolution, and that threatens those who've settled for stagnation. You didn't tell them to change, but now they can't unsee the truth you reflect. The most dangerous kind of truth isn't spoken, it's embodied. And you, chosen one, are the embodiment of growth, reflection, and quiet transformation. People feel it, they resist it, but eventually they'll either rise with it or run from it. You didn't choose to be their mirror, but now that you are, don't dim. Let them see what they've been avoiding. Number 9, they can't use you anymore, and it hurts. You weren't their enemy, you were their ego's support system. That's the twisted part. They didn't hate you, they needed you. Beneath them, you were their emotional crutch, the one they looked down on just to keep themselves upright. Every time their life felt empty, they leaned on the thought that at least you were doing worse. Every time they failed quietly, they whispered your name to feel a little better about their own mess. But now, that crutch is gone, and they're limping through life with nothing to hold on to. When someone uses your pain to patch their pride, your healing feels like betrayal. You didn't wrong them. You outgrew the version of you that made them feel superior. You became something they can't degrade, can't mock, can't manipulate. And now the same people who once stared at your scars can't even look you in the eye. Because the person they used to use has become the person they secretly envy. Imagine a bully returning to the playground, ready to laugh, only to find the one they mocked is now running the whole damn school. That's what this feels like to them. The same page they used to check for comfort now fills them with shame. Your wins feel like personal attacks to them, even though you never aimed at them. That's what exposure does. It shows who was really small the whole time. And maybe you're wondering, why can't they just be happy for me? Because their identity was built on your struggle. Your glow-up didn't just strip them of superiority, it stripped them of purpose. You were their secret measurement of success. And now that you've outgrown that box, they're left staring at a mirror they never wanted to face. You weren't their rival, you were their excuse, and now they've got none left. Let them sit in that. Let them fumble in silence while you continue to rise, because they can't use you anymore, and it hurts more than they'll ever admit. Number 10, you became their forced reflection. They didn't fall apart because of what you did. They fell apart because of what you revealed. That's the cruel beauty of it. You weren't trying to expose them. You weren't seeking revenge. You didn't clap back, drag their name, or put their business on blast. All you did was exist. All you did was keep rising while they kept pretending. And now the universe has done what you never had to. It locked them in a room with their own reflection. No distractions, no scapegoats, no lies loud enough to drown out the truth. They've been cornered, not by you, but by reality. The same games they played, the shade they threw, the masks they wore, it's all collapsing now. And what's left? A raw, unfiltered view of everything they never wanted to see in themselves. You became the one thing they never expected, proof of their own failure to evolve. When the truth stands tall, the fake have no place to hide, not even behind each other. Imagine someone sprinting from mirror to mirror, smashing each one, desperate not to see themselves. But there's always one left standing, and this time it's you. Your strength, your healing, your growth. It reflects back what they can't run from anymore. You are the living reminder that they've been the problem all along, and now their only option is to either evolve or collapse. You weren't always this mirror. They used to laugh at you, mock your pace, pick at your flaws. But now they can't even breathe near your name without feeling exposed, because you've become the truth they were trying to bury. The silent proof that all their excuses, blame games, and superiority were built on quicksand. And maybe they ask, why does your glow hurt so bad? Because it lights up their shadows. And once the shadows are visible, there's no pretending left. You didn't ask to be their reflection, but now that you are, don't apologize for it. Let them deal with what they see. The rot, the lies, the masks. None of that belongs to you. You just held up the mirror. Number 11, you inspire even your enemies. They mocked you in public, but studied you in private. That's the twisted game they play. These people who once laughed at your journey, now they mimic your moves. They watched you fall and swore you'd never rise again. But when you did, with grace, with power, with purpose, they couldn't look away. And the worst part for them, you became the example they never wanted to admit they needed. They still talk slick, still throw shade, but behind closed doors, they're taking notes, copying your steps, repeating your affirmations, imitating your energy, because the same progress they pretended to ignore is now the map they're following. You've become their silent instructor, the unwanted mentor in their story of self-discovery. Even enemies crave the light when their own darkness turns on them. Imagine a thief mocking a builder while the house is under construction, but once the structure is complete, once it stands strong, unshakable and admired, the same thief sneaks back at night to learn how it was done. That's them. They never respected your struggle, but they want the results. They want the power, the healing, the self-mastery, but without walking through the fire that forged you. And you might ask, why can't they just respect me openly? Because respect would mean admitting they were wrong about you. It would mean owning up to their jealousy, their judgments, their cheap shots. And their pride can't handle that. So they'll keep pretending they don't see you, while quietly trying to become you. Real power isn't who they applaud, it's who they imitate when no one's watching. So let them study, let them copy, let them transform, even if they'll never give you credit. You didn't rise for their validation, you rose because you refused to stay small. And now, even the ones who tried to break you are reshaping themselves because of you. That's how unstoppable you are. You don't just survive your enemies, you inspire them. Number 12, you were built to trigger awakening. You weren't made to fit in, you were made to flip the lights on in dark rooms people swore they were safe in. That's why your presence makes them uncomfortable. That's why they flinch when you speak the truth, even when you say nothing at all. Chosen one, you weren't built to soothe egos, you were built to shake souls awake. You are the interruption in the story they thought would go unchallenged, the glitch in their fake reality, the thunder in their silent denial. People don't reject you because you're too much. They reject you because you force them to look at what they've been avoiding. Your glow isn't for aesthetics, it's for exposure. And when you walk into a room, masks start slipping without a single word, because your energy doesn't play pretend. It doesn't tolerate smallness, fakeness, or spiritual laziness. It calls things out just by existing. You don't even have to open your mouth. Your vibration already did the talking. Imagine someone in a deep sleep, convinced their dream is real, until an alarm they never set goes off. That's what you are. The divine alarm. The one they didn't ask for, but needed. And now that you've entered their reality, they can no longer go back to sleep. Not without knowing what they saw. Not without feeling what you triggered. And maybe you've wondered, why do people walk away from me after meeting me? Because you shift the atmosphere. You show them what alignment feels like, and that's terrifying to someone who's never looked inward. You make them rethink their choices. You make them question their comfort zones, not with judgment, but with truth. Raw, undeniable truth. You're not intimidating, they're just underprepared for your clarity. So don't shrink, don't dim. You weren't placed here to be understood by everyone. You were placed here to light a fire under those who stopped growing. And yes, it's going to repel the ones who refuse to evolve. But it'll awaken those who are ready to rise. That's your purpose, that's your power. You are the awakening they never saw coming. Number 13, your glow didn't heal them. It exposed the wound they tried to hide. They didn't come to celebrate your success. They came hoping it would distract them from their failure. That's the twisted motive behind why they kept watching you. Not out of support, not out of admiration. They thought your glow might give them temporary relief. They thought seeing you do okay would somehow ease the ache of their own emptiness. But instead of finding comfort, they found clarity, and it hurt like hell. Your rise didn't soothe them, it exposed them, because real peace can't be faked. And when you started radiating from within, when your energy shifted from survival to sovereignty, it triggered something in them they weren't ready to face. You see, they never did the inner work. They dressed up their wounds with ego, distraction, and false narratives. But your light, it peeled all that away. Your transformation wasn't a feel-good story to them, it was a mirror they couldn't avoid. Imagine someone patching a cracked wall with cheap paint, hoping no one notices. Then someone walks in with a flashlight, and every fracture is now undeniable. That's what your glow did. It shined on the things they swore were buried. It called out the pain they never processed, the envy they denied, the stagnation they kept blaming others for. And now, every time your name comes up, so does their discomfort. Maybe you've asked, why are they so bitter about my growth? Because your joy makes them feel fake. Because your healing highlights how far they've refused to go. Because your peace isn't performative, and theirs is crumbling behind closed doors. You didn't outshine them, you out-healed them, and that's what stings the most. You became the proof that healing is possible, and they hate you for reminding them they chose the easier path, the path of avoidance, blame, and image. Let them sit in that. You didn't choose this war, but your light became the battlefield, not because it attacked them, but because it revealed everything they still pretend not to feel. Number 14. They wanted to watch you lose. Now they're watching you win without them. They didn't support you when you were down, and now they're not invited to stand with you while you rise. That's the brutal balance the universe brings. These weren't just passive bystanders, chosen one. These were people who enjoyed your struggle, who secretly clapped for your pain, who watched you bleed and thought, good. That's what they deserve. They weren't just waiting for your downfall, they were rooting for it. You were the tragedy they wanted front row tickets to. But instead of watching you break, they watched you build. Instead of a collapse, they got a comeback. And now they're stuck in the seats, unable to leave, choking on the success story they never expected to see. They stayed to watch you lose, but now they can't look away from the glow-up they're not part of. Imagine someone waiting outside a burning building, hoping to see you walk out in ashes, only to watch you emerge untouched, with gold on your skin and fire in your eyes. That's how your victory feels to them. Not only did you make it out one, you made it out better. And the same people who once pointed and laughed, now they sit in silence, watching, jealous, powerless. You might wonder, why don't they just move on? Because they can't. They invested too much in your failure. They burned the bridge with their silence, their mockery, their fake concern. And now that the tables turned, they're stuck in exile, not because you pushed them away, but because they disqualified themselves with their own wickedness. You're not leaving them behind out of spite. They removed themselves with their betrayal. Let them watch. Let them replay the moment they doubted you, because now they get the privilege of witnessing a story they'll never be written into again. You're winning, not out of revenge, but out of alignment. And they're just the footnote in a book they thought they'd control.